Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name is Ben Warney, and joining me on the line, as always, Mr. Ethan Projector Inspector Sachs. I hear you've been going in the trenches this week, Ethan, and checking out Team Handshake's Blue-Black deck.
Yeah. I tried. I feel like I don't have quite enough to report yet. Maybe next week, but trying to dig up what's going on in these underrated strats. I've definitely played quite a bit of blue black, but like I don't know. It feels like a deck that you don't want to force, because if you do, you can really you can get a powerful deck, but you can also like kind of just get a bunch of mediums and then end up like 1-2ing. And then you're like, oh, well, this archetype stinks. It's like, yeah, but you forced it. So like, what did you expect? So I still feel like I have some more work in the lab to do.
Very responsible data collection from you. We're trying to get it to happen au natural there, just when you're
Yeah,
supposed to. It's going to take a while. You got to let it marinate. You got to
I
do those
know.
drafts. Got to get
I
the
know.
reps in.
But I do like it. And I did, as we'll get to a little bit later, I qualified for day 2 of the Arena Open. We're recording in the midst of our day 2 runs here. But I qualified for day 2 with blue black and looked like kind of not great. I mean, I had double Lazav, but then the rest was like just kind of filling it out with whatever. And it impressed. I mean, I think what blue black has going for it is a bunch of cheap, good rares that no one else wants. Like, you're not really splashing Lazav or Atrata in other decks, but in blue black, like playing those cards on curve can just run away with the game.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you? How are things in the Magic world? Have you recovered from the con? Have you recovered from Chicago?
I'm still dragging a little bit, mostly because I was gone from school for a few days, so that means more work when I get back. And we just had a big band auction last night, a big fancy dinner fundraiser thing. So there's been a lot going on, as usual. I was qualifying for day 2 at 1 a.m. last night, no big deal.
Wow.
But we got it done, which was a very nice feeling. I got back from MagicCon Chicago, and it was incredible. But I was very done with Magic. Like, we got back the next day, and I saw in Discord, Lord Tupperware is playing Magic Arena, and I messaged you, how on earth are you playing Magic right now?
I'm not well. I have a sickness, and I don't appreciate you calling me out. What do you mean? It had been it's easy after the con, after playing in paper, playing online, easy peasy. Barely have to pay attention.
That is true. Playing online is easy peasy. I do agree with that. So I took the week off. I didn't play Magic until Friday. Did some drafts on Friday evening, and then Arena Open, and now I'm ready to crush. My brain is fully refreshed.
I'm aghast. My jaw's on the floor. That's four days without playing Magic.
4 days without playing Magic. I went clean. Yeah.
Whew.
I got a little chip,
I got a little chip. There's a shiver went up my spine. It doesn't feel right to me. All right, well, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of varying segments before we dive into reviewing our day 2 draft ones here in the Arena Open. First things first, a little housekeeping. Let's chat about the Patreon page. Patreon.com/Lords of Limited is where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. Everybody who gives back to the show via the Patreon gets access to the Discord. Weekends like this the Discord's always great, but weekends like this is where it really shines, where people are comparing pools, getting feedback. You just really have this great hive mind of limited degens in the Lords of Limited Discord to get feedback on. And then you get to cheer people on, the ones who do make day 2, or if people are just like, capped out at like 3, it's very easy to, like, if you're feeling like, but I could do a 4th. I think people really are like, look, like, get that life equity. You don't need to do like 12 runs. I don't know if you saw just Lola Man's tweet.
I did when I woke up this morning. And I was thinking, ooh, that could have been me.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I think he said he had 4 or 3 6-3s and then a bunch of 5-3s, and took him like 11 attempts in 13 hours to qualify. And holy cow. I mean, more power to him, but also if you want to take care of yourself and stop, the Lord's Limited Discord will help you out there too. So a lot of great perks to as you move up the reward tier ranks on the Patreon page. And of course, we want to shout out our new patrons the first week that they join. This week, we're welcoming Jack, Simcrow, Eric, Brandon, Anthony, Quillworth, and Kyle. Thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, I cannot say thank you enough, and truly mean it every week, but just like so fresh on my mind after Chicago. Just like the Lords of Limited community is incredible, whether you're a listener, whether you're in the Patreon, whatever. Thank you for being a part of the community and for listening to the show every week and giving back when you can. Truly cannot say thank you enough. The show is also brought to you by an unnamed company. that could be your company sponsoring this beautiful Lords of Limited podcast. So insert your name here, any potential advertising sponsors
Yeah.
out there, and we could direct listeners to that unnamed place to get those booster boxes to store in their closet.
Yeah. We're on the market. We're free agents at the moment for the booster box closet collection. Another very cool event happened this weekend. In addition to the Arena Open, a little fundraiser, a charity event called Vintage versus Type 1, which was a fundraiser for type 1 diabetes research. As folks, I assume most of our listeners know, I was diagnosed with type 1 a little over 2 years ago. Weird, scary surprise visit to the ER. Have it under control. And Brian David Marshall, who was on the Pro Tour coverage, Magic historian for, I feel like, couple of decades. He's also a type 1 diabetic, and he organized this awesome event where folks hopped in a vintage cube draft queue and then got to draft a deck via a stipulation. People could pay donations to, up the number of cards in your deck, reduce the number of cards in your deck, add power to it, whatever, like lots of stipulations there, and then face off against someone else. So yesterday was Marshall Sutcliffe versus Paul Cheon, and then myself versus Reed Duke. And then today there's 2 more matches as well. A really awesome event. They raised over $10,000 already yesterday. Ben, thank you for donating a Mox to my deck. It did not show up. It was shy in my 2 games against Reed. So my stipulation that I got was they were all, you picked one of 8 Billy Joel songs. And
Okay.
that revealed.
I did see that. I wasn't able to watch the event because I had people in town and then was playing table tennis. Like, I had stuff going on. But I was very curious because I did see that on Twitter.
Well, so apparently, so BDM, Brian David Marshall's brother, passed away from complications of type 1. And Billy Joel was his favorite music artist. So this was sort of an homage to him. So you picked a song and then that revealed a stipulation for you.
Okay.
So I picked Still Rock and Roll to Me. Because part of it, like, I was going to pick Big Shot because I like that song a lot. But I was like, is Big Shot going to be like, you have to draft like
all
the
big
most
creatures,
the most
sneak
expensive
attack.
thing in
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. So I'm curious to see what Big Shot is. So I picked Still Rock and Roll to Me, which was if there's an art, you get Karn, Scion of Urza in your deck already. And if there's an artifact in the pack, you have to take it. And I was like, this
Channel
is pretty
your
good.
inner LSV Tolarian Academy, huh?
I know, but no Tolarian Academy. But people did donate to give me a Mishra's Workshop and an Urza Saga. So this is pretty cool.
So my Mox was good.
Your Mox was great.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, I mean,
too bad you couldn't draw it.
You knew that Mox was going to be good. But then so Reed picked We Didn't Start the Fire, which was, as you might expect, it was like your deck has Sulfuric Vortex in it.
Okay.
And anytime there's the word fire in a card, you have to take it.
Okay.
Fire's not in the name of many cards in the Vintage Cube. So Reed basically just got to draft a nutso mono red aggro deck.
Okay.
Yeah. So I lost.
So it sounds like you lost then from that tone of voice.
Two speedy games. Yeah, because it was like the mirror. I was mono red with a bunch of artifacts, and he was mono red with a bunch of burn spells.
Good cards.
Yeah. Okay. So we lost that one, but it was for a good cause. It was very fun. Ben, we got some Chicago cleanup to do here.
Yeah, just like not on the official live stage show or pre-Chicago. First of all, I just want to say huge congrats to you for getting on the PT, playing on the PT, doing an awesome job, getting on the news desk. Like, you crushed it all weekend, and I don't know. Feels weird to say I'm proud of you, but very proud of you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thankful to have you as a co-host on the podcast. I want to shout out to William at the end of the weekend for getting a beta forest my way. A year or 2 ago, I had started collecting beta basics for drafting. I'm still working on it, and I'm now +1 beta forest. So thank you, William. Great person, very fun to talk to. The Lords of Limited log that you made, the video log, if folks haven't checked this out yet, it is on YouTube. You have got to check it out if you want to see what a Magic Con is like, or if you enjoy the podcast. I'm sure you will enjoy a behind-the-scenes look at what we did all weekend at Magic Con Chicago. So that's on the Lords of Limited YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed there, what are you doing? youtube.com/@Lords of Limited. Get it done. I also just want to say the live show was incredible. Thank you very much to Wizards for having us, Greg Collins, Josh Lee Kwai for putting us in touch with Greg Collins. That was a blast. One of the highlights of the weekend for sure, and one of the coolest things I've done. And you can find that recording on Magic's official YouTube page. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we'll make sure to put links to all that stuff in the notes where you download the episode.
So if you have not been to a Magic Con yet, this is my first Magic Con since they've started combining them with PTs. and you love Magic, you should make it a point to go. Don't even necessarily have to be a limited whatever. Just if you love Magic, the art, Commander, Constructed, whatever it is, like it was an incredible weekend. Just being around that many people that cared about the same thing as you and a bunch of dentists, like it was awesome.
Yes, dentist con happening in our hotel the week prior. Nice overlap.
And we kind of already shouted out the Lords of Limited community, but also our Twitch community and our Twitch friends that we were able to hang out with all weekend, like truly bumped that weekend way up. And got a question for you, Ethan. MagicCon Amsterdam, is it happening? Get a little babysitter for Jonah?
I don't. Oh, man, that's so tough. No, I feel like it's got to be a no for me at the moment. But we'll see.
At the moment? You
At the
can't drop
moment.
crumbs like that for me.
What do you mean?
That my hope's gonna keep up.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to string you along. It's the strategy.
The hook.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to think about doing that in whatever. What is it? 4 months, 5 months, and no less. It's in June, right?
It's in June 28th. #summer.
Oh, that feels like a big no for me. But I encourage you to go. You don't need me. You can take the training wheels are off. Be free.
We'll see. I don't know. Traveling to Europe alone, I might be roping my brother Adam into going with.
Oh,
him.
there
We'll
you
see.
go. Oh my gosh, a little Euro trip with the Werney boys. That sounds great. Well, speaking of Josh Lee Kwai, who has been just a delightful champion of our show for a long time when we were just starting out, and put us in touch, as you said, with Greg Collins for getting the live show up on the main stage in Chicago. He sent me an email, and I was expecting the beginning part of this, just like, hey, it was great to see you and great to see you guys up on the stage, blah, blah, blah. And
no,
then,
straight down to business.
But that was like the first 2 sentences of the email. And then the rest was a very unexpected, strategic, limited question, which I was delighted by. And I thought, I sent it to you. I was like, I think this is a good question. Let's just do it on the show. I asked Josh if he was okay with it. So here we are. So he said, I'm writing because I drafted MKM last night and realized there's a scenario I've been running into quite often that I'm not really sure how to navigate. It's when we're drafting these aggressive white-based decks with a ton of 2-drops, I'm often not 100% sure the proper order I should be deploying them. For instance, I was on the play. It was turn 2. My opponent went land, go. I draw my card for turn. I have a plains on the battlefield from turn 1 and the following hand. So 2 lands, it looks like, a mountain and a plains, 2 tricks, Auspicious Arrival and On the Job, and 3 creatures, Market Watch Phantom, the 2/2 that can gain flying if you play something that has power 2 or less, Reckless Detective, the red 0/3 that when it attacks you can rummage or sack an artifact, and if you do, it gets +2/+0 and you draw a card, and Red Herring, the 1 and a red 2/2 with haste that's also a clue, and it attacks each turn of Fable. What 2-drop should I play and why? Found myself going round and round in my head and not really being confident with any answer. Could play the Reckless Detective to start rummaging. Could play the Market Watch Phantom to guarantee flying for the next 2 turns. Or I could play the Red Herring to get those 2 points of damage in right now. What would you do here? And then an addendum of what if instead of the Reckless Detective, I had an innocent bystander? So first thing I want to say is thank you, Josh, for the question, for the podcasting fodder. And I want to pose to you that I kind of want to start doing this kind of thing as a weekly segment if we can, because he made a point of I feel like the focus on our show and on limited shows in general is often on the drafting. That's the easiest thing to be able to talk about. It's where things often shift, as we've tried in the past with What's the Play episodes. Those are just really hard to translate complicated board states to an audio medium, and so we've sort of shied away from that over the years. But I think maybe sprinkling in just a what's the play like this, a deck building question, a mulligan decision, a sideboarding decision, something non-draft related each week that we can just sort of pepper into the show. What do you think?
I'm in for it. And as long as it's small, some of the danger with that stuff is there's so much context needed.
Yeah, you're okay, so my opponent's at 19 life. We're on turn 7. The graveyard is you just can't do that.
Right. So early game sequencing decisions, keeper mulligans certainly would be good ones. Yeah, I'm in for it for sure.
Okay, so great. And now I want to return to Josh's question. What is your sequencing and why?
Well, I responded to you, and then I was expecting some confirmation, either yeah, I agree, or a no, you're an idiot, but I got nothing. So I'm just wondering if you're going to roast me here on air when I propose what I would do. So
yeah, I'm ready to roast you.
Basically, you're trying to decide between Market Watch Phantom, the 2/2, Reckless Detective, and Red Herring, how you want to order the sequencing of those 3 creatures. And my thought is I want to lead on Market Watch Phantom for a couple of reasons. One, I know I can trigger it the next 2 turns with Reckless Detective and Red Herring, so that's going to get me in 2 guaranteed damage each turn. Whereas it's tempting, I think, to want to lead on Reckless Detective because you can then start, getting those triggers, sculpting your hand, whatever. But I feel less interested in that because my hand is great. Like if I
Right.
if I had something that I needed to happen with my hand, then I would certainly be leading on Reckless Detective. But as it is, my plan or my hope for this hand, like the curve I would want to draw out for the next few turns, I think this is the reason to not lead on Red Herring. So
Right.
the reason to not lead on Red Herring is you could be forced into firing off Auspicious Arrival earlier than you want to, which you really want to avoid, I think, with this hand, because this is a bonkers curve. So if you lead on Phantom, you're getting in 2 guaranteed damage in the air, the next turn and the next turn. And then so you already have 3 lands. So what you need to do to really get the nuts with this hand is hit a land in the next 2 turns. So my hope would be to go Market Watch Phantom, and then the following turn play Reckless Detective, and then hope I've hit a land. And then if I've hit my 4th land, then that next turn you can go Red Herring, swing with all 3, and have Auspicious Arrival up to protect either one of your creatures. But what I really want to do is try to not force myself into a spot where I feel like I need to prematurely use Auspicious Arrival. That's the +2/+2 combat trick.
Correct. Yeah. I told Josh that I would lead on Reckless Detective, but I think the differences between Detective and Phantom are small enough that you just want to highlight of like you're choosing between those two and you are not playing Red Herring. And this is like something that I think took me a little bit to figure out, but like the damage output from Red Herring really isn't going to be that much. You sort of think it will be because you're like, oh, I'm going to get in for 2 right now. And then I can attack with it again next turn while developing my board. But they're just so likely to play something that's going to trade off with it. And so your damage output is still only 2 if you play it now, versus if you play something that can get in the following turn, like Detective, which likely will be able to have a profitable attack next turn because of its 3 toughness, right? Assume your opponent is going to play, some 2 power thing, some 2/1, 2/2 on turn 2 when you pass. Your Detective will have a profitable attack. Then you can play Phantom. Same thing you can talk about with playing Phantom, because you're going to play Detective. You're likely to find, you're going to launch it in the air. It's going to attack past most things. Your opponent's not going to be playing some 2/2 flyer on turn 2. And then Red Herring comes in and is immediately impactful on turn 4, and you have Auspicious Arrival to protect whatever, like they're going to have to block. And so you have Auspicious Arrival to protect whatever they do end up blocking. The reason I like Detective personally on turn 2 here is because of what you said of like, the only thing, this hand is nuts. The only thing it's missing is a 4th land. And so I like having Detective now to give myself 2 shots or is it 3 shots, I guess, at finding that 4th land? Because I really want to make sure I have land 4 in play on turn 4 pre-combat. Like I don't want to be in a spot where I'm like, oh, I'm only on 3 lands and I can attack with Detective and get that rummage, but I won't be able to play that land until main phase 2 on turn 4, which means the double spelling potential of Herring attacking plus plus holding up Auspicious Arrival. That possibility is gone. So I like playing Detective here personally, but I think it's a little bit splitting hairs between those two.
You think you just have it's likely enough to have attacks that you're not worried about with the evasiveness of Market Watch. Like, what if your opponent plays a 1/3? You're missing out on so much damage. That's the thing to me. Like, if your opponent plays Gravestone Strider
Yeah,
or
or
whatever, like
Vichugazi.
you want to end the game. I mean, and
Yeah,
Vichugazi Inspector bricks anything, but
anything.
there are cards running
Seasoned
around
consultant.
that stop
Yeah,
that stop that stop Reckless Detective, that don't stop Market Watch Phantom. That
yeah.
was my thought, but that's what you're trying to. Then that's the decision you're making. You're either, do I want to give myself the maximum chance to push damage, or do I want to give myself the maximum chance to hit that 4th land drop? I
Hmm.
think that is the consideration.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I guess it does matter. He doesn't say here. I guess it does matter. Like, or does it matter? I mean, if they lead on plains, then like seasoned consultant is a possibility. Whereas like if they lead on mountain, like there's not a lot of 1/3s in red.
Right, sure.
That's pretty, again, small considerations there. Yeah, I stand by Reckless Detective. There's also like I mean, I guess they are. They're snap blocking with a 1/3, like 1/3 derp, and like if you have a trick, good for you. But yeah, you're right. So yeah, you potentially lose out on some damage, but you also potentially lose out on hitting your fourth land on time if you play Phantom.
Right. And then I think the other thing that's worth noting with haste creatures, like it's tempting to say, well, I need to play my haster first so that I get the
Right.
maximum haste value, but you get the burst damage from the haste on whatever turn you play it. So like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times it's right to do your haste creature last, pending other
Yes.
things.
Yes. No. Totally agree. So thank you, Josh, for the question, and I think thank you for the inspiration for future segments like this. This is
Love it.
I think these little puzzles are fun. Should we chat about some underrated cards?
We should. First to the list, this is a new addition as of this morning because I think both you and I are crazy high on this card, and I don't think the rest of the world is, and I'm pretty sure we're right. This is Projector Inspector. 2 and a blue, 3/2 ETBs, you draw, discard, and then anytime a detective enters the battlefield, you loot as well. This is better than Rafine's Informant. It's that type of card, but like way better because it's continual. When you have Projector Inspector in a deck that is built around it at all, you get so much control over what your draw is.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's fantastic. I was surprised, you alluded to the team handshake blue black tech. I was surprised that they shouted out disliking cards like or the being lower on cards like Projector Inspector because of the spot on the curve that they occupy. But I just think Projector Inspector is so strong. Like the loot that it immediately gives you plus the possibility for future loots as we'll see in my day 2 draft 1 deck, it's just phenomenal. Like that kind of card selection for free, right? That the free loot that gives you is you like it can't be understated how powerful that is.
And once you get 2 free loots, like you're in the territory of what is it called? Steam Core Scholar or whatever, the 2 and a blue 2/2 flying vigilance, draw 2 cards, discard
Yeah.
2 cards. I mean, it's not that powerful, but it's like close to that powerful, and that card's very good.
Yeah, big agree. I was just
It,
checking
it
on.
fuels your graveyard for collect evidence. It does so. It's like ties the room together for so much of what blue, like how blue supports other colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, slap a thinking cap on it. Now it's a 4/4
Yeah.
for 1 mana. Yeah. Yeah. Projector Inspector, great. I do still feel best blue common for me. Like not
Yes.
close.
Yes. Next up, we've got a big riser up over the past week for me. This is Make Your Move, 2 and a white for an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. This card just hits so many things you want to hit. Like, totally fine main decking the first copy in white decks.
Yeah, I think we'd been on pick your poison main deck in green decks. These are, I think, with the caveat of if you're low on interaction. I think playing a card like Make Your Move or Pick Your Poison in their respective decks is totally fine main decking the first copy because in the spots where it doesn't have targets, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah, and I think I don't even know if I would make the caveat of light on interaction. I think the first copy is just pretty good if you want to be
Really?
able to interact with those types of things.
Hmm.
Like people are running around with makeshift bindings everywhere. Blowing that up is such a beating. The cases are enchantments, like there's broken artifacts running around. There's build around enchantments. I have just loved these cards.
Yeah,
And
I
and
agree.
anytime Pick Your Poison gets a flyer creature, like it's just so game swinging.
It's the new tech for Pioneer for getting the Vein Ripper, getting the 6/5 ward off the board. Single
Oh yeah,
mana, make him sack a flyer.
there you go.
Yeah. Next up is Museum Nightwatch. I remember a very handsome co-host of this podcast being high on this in the crash course, and someone else just telling him how wrong he was. But now it's on this list.
It's on this list. Yeah, that handsome co-host was very right, and I humbly apologize for slandering his good card evaluation skills. This Museum Nightwatch is the 3/2 that dies into a 2/2 detective. This is in the vein of Loxodon Eavesdropper or Cold Case Cracker. Like it's on par with those cards, and it's pretty annoying when you go to trade morphs. And like for me, I just forget about this one, and I trade
Yeah.
morphs, and then they flip it up, and they're left with a 2/2, and you just feel like ugh, like, and then
Yeah.
you're getting attacked. That's the problem is you think you were the beatdown, and then all of a sudden you're getting attacked back on the crackback. That's what's been the kicker for me, why I've been so impressed with it. Like every time I
Hmm.
get by it, the
It
script of the game gets totally turned on its head.
yeah, it changes the tempo. You steal the play a little bit when
Yeah.
you get to flip that up. On the job here in all caps, 2 white white +2/+1 to all your creatures at instant speed plus investigate. I mean, like, it's kind of crazy that we need to talk about this card, but I do feel like we do.
Well, so I think first of all, it and Out Cold were kind of comparable for me, like in the four
Mm-hmm.
drop slot. But On the Job is significantly better than Out Cold. I think it's just impossible to play around. I mean, like you kind
Yeah.
of can, but like most of the time, your opponent could just flash you the On the Job because it's really obvious whenever your opponent has it. And you're still like, it's just such a deflating card to play against. And when you're the person with it and you're swinging out, you're like, great. Like, math is for blockers.
I don't know if my opponent earlier this week intended to do this, but I had someone who, I think they had like 5 creatures in play. They like snap clicked 2 attackers and then like limped the other 3 into the red zone. And that action, like, usually if people just go like snap, swing all, and
Yeah.
they have on the job mana, it's definitely the first card that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
The limping across the finish line, red zone thing, and then I was just like, well, it can't be on the job. But then it was.
They got you.
I was like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I'm definitely adding that to my arsenal. I thought that was great. Next up, we have Reasonable Doubt. Speaking of tempos, 1 and a blue, instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, and you can suspect up to 1 target creature. I mean, it's Quench.
It's Quench, but it's been good.
Yeah.
For me, against me, I've played with it a little bit more this week. The one bummer about it is if your opponent sticks some disguise creatures before you get this used, you can kind of get in trouble. But the nice thing about it is so many of the things have ETB make a clue in the format. Like you can nab them before you get 2 for 1 by a lot of the cards. And stops bomb rares, like holding this up when your opponent's on 5 mana, 6 mana, those critical turns when they're going to be slamming the Ezrams and the whatever.
Izoni.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the Spider Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to nab those cards before they get their ETBs or before they're impossible to deal with. I've liked Reasonable Doubt a fair bit.
I agree. And back to the first card on this list, pairs great with Projector Inspector in that, like, if you feel like I've sort of missed my window for this card, well, you've got an inherent looter in your deck to just get rid of it when you feel like it's not the thing for you, or if you need to play to the board more.
Next card on the list, you've been doubting Basilica Stalker. This is 5 and a black for 5 and a black.
It's very expensive.
It's 5 and a black for the 3/4 flyer. Whenever it does damage to the opponent, you gain a life and surveil 1, and it's got disguise for 4 and a black. So I've just been really impressed by this body. If you can get it flipped up on turn 5, get a hit in, it's a kind of a problem for your opponent. They have to take time out to deal with it. It's hard to block. It dodges a lot of the cheap removal. They have to spend real cards stopping it. I don't know. I've liked this in black decks a fair bit. It's been a problem every time I've seen it on the battlefield for me or my opponent.
Yeah, I've been. I think in like there's because I'm looking down the list of these cards, and there's a lot of them where I'm like, I'm finally on board. Like, it took me a while, and I feel like I'm getting there with Stalker. I still don't think it's anything more than just like filler plus.
But I think also I've been playing in a lot of you in these Insidious Roots chalk outline collect evidence decks. You want 6 mana disguise creatures to play to like trade and then fill your graveyard with collect evidence 6. And I think it is one of the best of those options because I also feel fine just like playing it, flipping it up on 5 and, putting my opponent in a tough spot too. If it doesn't make its way to the graveyard, it is one of the ones I am happiest to have on the battlefield.
Well, and to that, I think it's specifically in the black-green roots chalk outline deck, the Surveil 1 is relevant as well, because that then can help continue to, even if it doesn't go to the yard itself, it can continue to fuel other things going there for your creatures to leave.
Yeah.
This is my beefy disguised creature of choice. A Vendor at Large is so good. This is 4 in a red, 5/4. When it ETBs or flips up, if it can flip up for 4 in a red as well, target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This is just a beating. I don't know what else to say. It's just a big beating and is good in both scenarios. Like, you're happy to like flip this up on 5 mid combat. You're happy to curve into this on 5 and like A 5/4 on blocks that turn while you're also pushing damage is good in a race. I think this card's great.
Yeah, card's very impressive. Quick arena open story in
Yeah.
my run that I queued for. I read my opponent for I really stopped taking damage. They had a pyrotechnic performer face up, and we were kind of racing, and I like pumped the brakes because I didn't want to. If they had double offender at large face down, which they did, when it flips face up with pyrotechnic performer and pumps itself, you take 7
Oh.
to the dome. So I
Oh.
had like pumped the brakes when I was at 15 life. They flipped up their first one, offender at large, flipped up the second one, offender at large, and I won at 1 life because I had like made sure I took no more damage because they were playing very fishily. Like the only way it made sense for them to be playing the way they were was if both their face down cards were
Like they were just
offender at
desperate to
large.
push
Yeah,
damage.
just
Yeah.
absolutely desperate to push damage.
Wow. Good
It was a
read.
very
Good
cool game.
read. Best green common coming up next.
Not the best green
Are you
common, but
ready?
I am on board with your take where you just want to be playing Rebel Belt Maverick in green decks. I think it's green for the 1/1, ETB Surveil 2. Then you can pay green to exile from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on something. Card's just good. And when my opponent plays Rebel Belt Maverick on turn 1, I'm kind of like, ugh, it's gonna be annoying, gonna be a problem. It's a good glue card for the Chalk Outline and Insidious Roots decks, but it also just is kind of good enough to just play in green decks and get on the board on turn 1.
It's a buffalo, right? Like in no matter what green deck,
A small buffalo,
just
it's a buffalo wing.
it's a buffalo wing. That's true. No matter what kind of deck you're in, you're going to be able to use pieces of it. I had a question about it on stream this week of like, is Rebel About Maverick good in any green deck? And I'm always like, well, is it good in aggro decks? And it just is because you're getting whether it's a speed bump for your opposition. The Surveil 2 is likely going to feel like somewhat of a draw card. If you have any collect evidence in your deck, it maybe is fueling that. It can play in tandem with a double block or whatever. It's a body for on the job, and then it's in the bin, and you get to bump up a creature a little later on. It just does so much for the low cost of 1 mana.
Yep.
Crowd Control Warden. This is a card I'm finally on board with. Took me too long. Finally
It's
on board.
so good. This is 3 green white for the 4/4 ETB with a +1/+1 counter for each creature you control. It's got Disguise for 3 Selesnya. This card is huge. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult to play against because you don't want to chump block it. But then if you don't chump block it, your opponent doesn't have to flip it up.
Right.
And notice I'm saying as the defender because that's
Yeah,
how I've
right.
been playing against this card all the time. But your opponent doesn't have to flip it up. But then when they do decide to flip it up, you take 8 or you take 7. Like it's really tough to deal with and plays really well with Colossal Strength. I need to learn the name of that card. The +3/+3 and trample. What is it?
Fanatical Strength. There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, it's incredible with that card. It's just huge. And I think while it's not one of the disguised creatures you're like hoping to play as an off-color one, you just can. Like if you're in red white beats and you're a little low on threats or whatever, this is just a totally fine thing to slide into the 3-drop slot. And then oops, I'm like doing my attack all thing and then they don't block it, or they do and I flip it up on turn 5 and it's just a problem.
Also really good with Escape Tunnel. Really good with Escape Tunnel.
I have not done that yet. Yeah, I haven't done the like you're at 5 and Escape Tunnel plus shenanigans wins me the game.
I did that a lot last week when we were in Chicago. I had not done it prior to that, and I did it 4 or 5 times in Chicago.
Nice. Talk to me about Case File Auditor.
It's 2 and a white 1/4 that lets you look at 6 and put a case from the top in your hand. And then whenever you solve a case, you also get to look at the top 6 and try to find another case. I think for messier drafts, I don't think this card's a high pick, but if you're in a messy draft and you maybe have a couple good cases, this card is splash worthy, I think, because there's a lot of good green cases as well. Certainly, I had this in a deck with Case of the Locked Hothouse and a couple other cases, but just it digs you towards some of your best cards, maybe in a draft that went a little wonky. Just a card to look out for. It was not on my radar at all, and it is now on my radar.
Bucket list for me still is Case File Auditor plus High Alert from the list.
Ooh, that's nice.
Lets your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness. Case File Auditor can find High Alert because it's an enchantment. I want to do that. Repulsive Mutation is next. This is X green blue for an instant. You get to put X +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature and then counter target spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the highest power among creatures you control. Is it possible for this card ever not to be a massive beating?
No, you have when you When you're at parity or ahead with this card in hand, the game is done. Like
Done.
it's
You
it's
have a
like it's like
stranglehold on it.
Armageddon levels of good
Yeah.
when you're ahead. It's incredible, and it still goes way, way, way too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've just played with it more the past week, and every time I play with it, I'm more impressed by it.
Yeah, it's a massive 2-for-1. I was doing a coaching session this week, and someone had drafted 2 of these fairly early in the first half of the draft, and then I was like, "This is your plan now. Like, you just take like any derpy 2, like bubble smugglers are great here. Like now you're just like you want to get on board early, and then repulsive mutation is going to take you over the finish line."
Yep. Lastly, repeat offender. This is 1 in a black for the 2/1, and you can pay 2 in a black to suspect it. And if it's suspected, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Like this card is just a very good 2-drop in black decks. I've really liked it. I've been impressed with it. It plays defense well early in the game, and then turns into a real problem late in the game. I think
Yeah,
its best home is blue black decks that want to leave their mana up.
oh, that's a good call. Yeah, I also think it's just like totally fine in red black because when you get the problem with this card in terms of when you're beating down with it is you never really want to spend 3 mana to suspect it.
And
But
that gives you ways to suspect it without spending the
right,
3.
so if you have ways to suspect it without investing additional mana into it, and then it's just the 3 mana pump, like it really does. But you're like, oh man, I am gonna have to deal with this. I have definitely lost to my share of 6/5 repeat offenders.
Yeah, it's very good with Clandestine Smuggler or whatever that card is, the
Mhm.
3/2 that can suspect a creature.
Yeah. We chatted a bit about our journeys for day 1. Shall we take a look at some draft logs for day 2 of the Arena Open?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I think mine is a little less contentious, perhaps I'll use the word to tease yours.
Wow. I feel like I just got sent a timeout.
Yeah, you're in trouble, mister. Pack 1, pick 1, want, no good, real great rare open for us. Illicit Masquerade is here, 3 in a black enchantment. When it ETBs, you put an imposter counter on each creature you control, and then whenever a creature you control with an imposter counter on it dies, exile it, return up to 1 other target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I don't think this card, I've seen this card go off. I don't think this is a good card.
Do you know what it's super sick with?
What is it super sick with?
Insidious Roots and Chalk Outline. Because the creature that dies hits the graveyard,
Oh,
goes
and
to exile,
then
and then the one that leaves the graveyard comes back. I
oh,
popped off with this in a draft in a Chalk Outline Insidious Roots deck. It was super fun, but I generally agree this card is hot garbage.
yeah. Yeah. If I'm just messing around, maybe a pack 1, pick 1, I'd like see what we can do. But in a draft like the Arena Open or the PT, I'm not interested. It's a pretty weak pack. I think it really comes down to Perimeter Enforcer is the uncommon here. 1 in a white, 1/1 flying lifelink. Whenever another detective enters the battlefield under your control, or a detective is turned face up that you control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
I
That's
mean,
just like
you'd rather open a bomb rare, but I feel good with packs like this where there's just a clear pick,
yes,
and I know I have no other recourse I could have taken. Like my draft is starting this way. It's a very nice, safe feeling. I have no responsibility here.
I agree. Right. I'm not even being put in a spot where it's like perimeter enforcer versus reckless detective, and then I have to be like, okay, am I going to fight for white? Am I going to avoid white and regret it? Like, yeah, it's just this is the clear pick. Let's move on to pick 2. Pack 1, pick 2 have some options. For me, it came down immediately to Makeshift Binding in the common slot. That's the 2 in a white enchantment. ETBs exile target creature and opponent controls until Makeshift Binding leaves the battlefield and you gain 2 life as like the best follow-up. And then as the best card in the pack, I think Torch the Witness. X and a red sorcery deals twice X damage to target creature. If excess damage was dealt to that creature this way, investigate. Do you agree that if it was pack 1, pick 1, do you take Torch?
Oh, pack 1, pick 1, you 1,000% take Torch, yeah.
And then is the gap small enough that you would take Binding here as a follow-up to Enforcer?
For me, it is, but I could see a lot of people disagreeing and saying Torch is better enough. But I think they're similar types of cards. Like they're both going to deal with about anything for 3 mana, and Makeshift Bindings in a color with Perimeter Enforcer. To me, I like the Binding pick, but I do think it's very close, and I could see people going the other way.
And then pack 1, pick 3 is interesting. So the first thing that jumps out to me is there's a Jace Wielder of Mysteries. It's the 1 triple blue planeswalker from the list. I thought, again, it's like the Illicit Masquerade. Like this would be fun, but in a draft like this, I don't think I want to take a triple blue card as a follow up to my 2 white, tempo cards. It came down to me between two uncommons. There's no white cards that I really wanted to take. There's Make Your Move. There's Not on My Watch. That's the one on a white exile target attacking creature uncommon. And then Granite Witness as the 2 white blue 3/2 flying vigilance artifact detective. It has disguise for Azorius hybrid. And when it's turn face up, you can tap or untap another target creature. I like that card a lot. But I felt like and sort of keeps me mono white in a way. Like I would play this in any white deck, but I felt like the power level gap between this and the two uncommons I was choosing between was too great. So those two uncommons were Exit Specialist, 1 on a blue for a 2/1, can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater, has disguise for 1 on a blue, and when it's turn face up, return another target creature to its owner's hand. And a Killer Among Us, 4 and a green for an enchantment. When it ETBs, you make a human, a merfolk, and a goblin token. Then you choose one secretly, and you can sack Killer Among Us, reveal the chosen creature type. If target attacking creature token is the chosen type, put 3+1/+1 counters on it, and it gains Death Touch until end of turn.
This is a tough choice.
It is a tough choice. It's one, like, I feel like I had your voice in my head of like, I think this is just close, and you're just sort of saying something about the direction you're gonna go, you want to go, you envision going with this pick.
Yeah, I think I would have landed on a Killer Among Us here, but like you could tell me I'm getting Exit Specialist and I wouldn't be disappointed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's very close. I don't know what's right here.
Yeah, I took Exit Specialist. I think a couple things here. One, blue-white is where Perimeter Enforcer is going to be its best.
Yeah.
Exit Specialist is a detective, already pairs well with the Enforcer. I think getting a 2-drop when you can is like really important. Like just starting off with 2 premium 2-drops felt great to me. And like Killer Among Us, I just knew in my heart, if I took a Killer Among Us, I was gonna end up in a messy, soupy pile. Like I was gonna go like base green, I'm splashing Binding, and I'm gonna give up on Enforcer. Like it's very unlikely if I take Killer Among Us, I'm gonna end up in green-white beats.
I agree. I kind of like the Exit Specialist pick. I just don't know if I would have been brave enough to make it. I don't think I would have been. I do kind of like it though.
Yeah. So I took Exit Specialist, and then immediately no white cards, no blue cards. There are some blue gold cards that we'll choose between, but it's all black and red. So I feel I'm like a little nervous. The nerves will go away as we get down to it. But the picks are between, there's Gadget Technician, the 2 blue red 3/2. When it's flipped up or when it ETBs, you make a 1/1 Thopter and has disguise for is it hybrid. Could take that and play it in a blue white deck, but seems like a bit of a hit. And then I was picking between Evidence Examiner, green blue 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can collect evidence for, and whenever you collect evidence, you investigate. And our fave, Aftermath Analyst, 1 and a green, 1/3 when it ETBs, mill 3. You can pay 3 and a green to sack it, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, you took Evidence Examiner here, and I think I would land on that as well. But I think a couple things worth noting here.
Yeah.
Pre-play boosters, this pack would have been like abandoned ship on white, abandoned ship on white. And I think with the start that you have, certainly if blue flows, like there's a world where you're still able to be blue-white detectives. And also this pack could just be an anomaly. Could be a gut check. And like it's really important, I think, in play boosters to not, like, my instinct when I see this pack is to panic.
Right.
I have to fight that so hard and
years and years of panic.
Right. Like just be cool. We don't know what the pack collation was like. Just see what keeps coming. And that's why I like the Evidence Examiner pick. I think it sets you up to pivot off white the best if you have to, but I think it's important to remind yourself, hey, I don't necessarily have to pivot off white here.
That is exactly my thought. And a breath of fresh air or a sigh of relief when we get to pick 5, because there are white cards, there are blue cards, and there is a Granite Witness. Again, the 4 mana 3/2 flying vigilance artifact gargoyle detective. And I think that is the clear best card in the pack, and certainly the best card for my deck. And then the underrated cards flow. Projector Inspector, pick 6.
This is inexcusable. Inexcusable.
And Projector Inspector, pick 7. And at that point, I'm basically just like, in my mind, I'm 90% to be blue-white at this point, but there's still a world where I could go blue-green, drop the Enforcer, try and splash Makeshift Binding. Projector Inspectors are still good in, blue-green for the looting, collecting evidence, etc.
But so another thing I want to do is rewind to pack one, pick two. Imagine
Uh-huh.
you take Torch and like all of a sudden
You're a mess.
you're
You're a
not
mess.
able to do that. You know what I mean? Like that's that ripple effect from picks 2 through 4. Like your draft looks like, oh, I don't know where I'm going. I'm gonna have to make some hard decisions, and just giving up on the power level gap between binding and torch, whatever that is, gives you so much more agency over the course of your draft.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the draft progresses. I don't end up seeing any signals. I just plod along on my blue white good curve life. End up with some nice go wide payoffs of I get an out cold, I get a fuss bother, I get an on the job, I have a Karlov watchdog, and then just a whole mess of 2 drops.
Yeah, it's good enough to draft at the PT. It's going to be good enough to draft at the Arena Open.
No Ezram. I was expecting Ezram to show up. Pack 2, pick 1 did not, but I'll take it. Yeah. So I'm hoping that I can just tempo some folks out with my. It's not like super powerful, but I think it's going to be very consistent. Here's a question for you. I only have 2 projector inspectors. So at the PT, I had 3 projector inspectors and Ezram. So I knew I wanted to get to like land 6, and so I ran 18 lands.
Mm-hmm.
Only 2 projector inspectors. Curve basically stops at 4 in this deck. I'm running 17. How do you feel?
I feel good about that.
Okay,
I've run 17 in decks like that in this format.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
It's a big decision for Ethan Sachs, though.
I mean, should I not be putting weight on 17 versus 18 lands there? Does it really matter? Like,
no, I think it does, but I think your default as a human is give me any excuse to run more land. So the fact that you're trimming a land means it's probably right to trim a land.
I hate missing land drops. Like,
I also hate missing land drops.
Flooding, I don't really care that much about. Like, being stuck on 2 lands on turn 3 or 4 is like my least favorite thing in Magic.
All right, that takes us over to my draft, where I do not have quite as safe and cozy of a pack 1, pick 1, I don't think. So when I look at my pack, I've got a Dog Walker as the best common, red white for the 3/1 Vigi with Disguise for Boros, and then no uncommons really in consideration, and that takes us on to the rare, which is Prof's Eidetic Memory. 1 and a blue for the enchantment, ETB, draw a card, you have no maximum hand size, and then the beginning of combat, however many cards you drew in excess of your first card, you get to put that many +1/+1 counters on target creature.
Yeah, this pick makes me a little sick to my stomach, to be honest. Like, I don't know I don't know what I would have done in the moment. Like,
I thought you meant I screwed it up so badly.
No. No, it's just
I was like, wow, this podcast is going out to thousands of people. Be gentle.
No. I just mean that, like, it feels very close. And honestly, prior to limited testing with Sanctum, I would have said Dog Walker, but enough of them were like, I think initially Prof's Eidetic Memory just went in the better than every uncommon pile. And I was like, whoa. Is this like, does everybody agree with this? And if that's true, then that's a note for me. I got to bump this up myself. And then we chatted about it. And I think it landed somewhere still ahead of, because I would have normally put it, but yeah, below the top, whatever, handful of commons even. Like, I'm taking Inspector and Dog Walker and Binding over this. And enough of them felt like, no, that's a mistake. You want to bump it up ahead of those. Like, maybe it's in the uncommons, like maybe you're taking Neighborhood Guardian over it and some other uncommons, but that it belongs in that power level tier. And so I would trust that process and take Eidetic Memory here, but the flexibility of Dog Walker is really appealing.
It is. I still, maybe I'm just wrong about this, but I still feel like Dog Walker needs other cards around it to really truly be good. And I was a little worried about White being choked. I don't know. And I also do really like Prof's Eidetic Memory. I've played with it once and been very impressed. And every time my opponent plays it, it's just a gigantic problem.
The other tiebreaker here, if we do feel like they're really close, is like, you're going to wheel a blue card.
That was what I decided, yes.
There's 3 blue cards plus Flotsam Jetsam plus Thundering Falls. Like, some people don't care about the Surveil lands. And like, one of those is going to wheel, and nothing is wheeling if you take Dog Walker. And so I think if it's close, I like that as a tiebreaker as well.
Yeah, that was the final tiebreaker for me. So I did land on Prof's Eidetic Memory. Pack 1, pick 2, another hard choice here, I think. So there's no real uncommons in consideration. So that takes us to just looking at the commons. And very quickly, this narrows down to cards of different colors than blue. The best blue card is Reasonable Doubt in the pack. 1 and a blue for the instant counter target spell. Controller pays 2. You're not second picking that card. So it comes down to Makeshift Binding, 2 and a white exile thing, gain 2, or locks it on Eavesdropper, the 3/3 elephant that makes a clue.
Yeah, I mean, because of what you said, there's no blue card to follow up. I would just treat this as a pack one, pick one. And in my pick order, I have makeshift binding ahead of eavesdropper. So I would take binding.
Yeah, I guess. But there's some amount of like, do you want to fight for white in this pick for me? And I think when I first picked Prof Eidetic Memory, I think if I wanted to fight for white, I would have taken Dog Walker, Pack One, Pick One over Prof Eidetic Memory. And once I didn't do that, my mentality is I don't really want to fight for white. Plus, Eavesdropper also works very well with Prof Eidetic Memory. Like it does combo there, it gives you the
Mm-hmm.
clue. So I think it's not nothing there. I don't think this is quite Pack One, Pick One levels. And I Profs is going to be great in blue white or blue green. I don't know. It's a close pick. But this was to me, do I want to fight for white or not? And I decided no. I didn't want to get trapped in the Arena Open scrapping for white.
I think that's fair. I think the thing I'm thinking about is it's so early, right? Pick two that like, yeah, I could be blue white with binding, but it's also way early that I can just splash binding in whatever blue deck I end up in. You also might like, what if white's open? That's the other thing is like all you did was pass a dog walker. Like just chill, like you're kind of leveling yourself here a little bit. I think if the roles were reversed, I'd be getting a real slap on the wrist from you.
I think you might be getting an earful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a really hard pick and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't feel great about taking Eavesdropper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was trying to ask myself when I was trying to decide, like, would I take Gardner here? And I think I would take Binding over Gardner, but I don't know. I really like Eavesdropper in these tougher drafts where the good cards dry up a little quicker. Eavesdropper being a 2-for-1 is really nice.
I agree.
So I don't know. I took Eavesdropper, hard pick between that and Makeshift Binding. Not sure I did it right. Pack 1, pick 3. Things, again, kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So commons, there's double on the job, but nothing really to write home about in white. There's a Loxodon Eavesdropper number 2 versus in the uncommons, Chalk Outline. 3 and a green for the enchantment. Whenever a creature card leaves your graveyard, create a 2/2 detective, then investigate. I'm really comfortable drafting the Chalk Outline Roots decks at this point, and I like them a lot. And that's the kind of thing in the Arena Open where people might shy away from.
Right. Yeah, I think you could definitely make an argument for it here. I also think you could make an argument for if I think Eavesdropper is the pick personally, like given what you have. I think if Eavesdropper is some dud, you can make an argument for Chalk Outline. I think you could also make a real argument for Case of the Filched Falcon on the uncommon slot. It's a card I only really like in blue red, but it pairs like Prof Eidetic Memory in blue red is nuts. And so I might take Case there and pop back a little bit to your pack one, pick one, and try and get deeper into blue. But
so if you'd taken Makeshift Binding, you're probably on Case here, right? The blue case?
Yeah, because it's that or
and on the job.
I mean, I think you could. I think Eavesdropper is still in that conversation. I'm not taking on the. Maybe I am. I don't know. I don't think I'm taking on the job third because Makeshift Binding doesn't screen. Like I said, like I'm taking it. I could be white, but I can also just easily splash it.
Yeah.
In any deck. So I don't need to start hard committing to white for on the job. On the job feels like forcing to me when I don't need to do that yet.
Right. So I took the second Eavesdropper here and I decided Arena Open, if the Chalk Outline wheels, like then we're talking.
Yeah.
Then I'll maybe start building around it.
Then we're chalking, right?
Then we're chalking. Oh, excuse me. There it is. Moving on to pack 1, pick 4. A little bit of like what could have been maybe here. So no commons in consideration. We're deciding between hard-hitting question and a private eye. Not even really deciding. This is hard-hitting question as the pick. Green for the sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to power to target creature planeswalker you don't control. With double Loxodon, Eavesdropper. It's hard-hitting question here. Had we gone the blue-white route,
right? If you're taking binding, you would take private eye here.
You would take private eye here. Yeah. And again, that's that ripple effect. But I feel fine about where we're at. I feel fine abandoning Prof Eidetic Memory. I know with double Eavesdropper hard hitting question, I can be base green. And once you're base green, it's pretty hard to get cut out of a functional deck.
Yeah. I mean, when all is said and done, I like your spot at the end of pick 4 the most of any of the iterations. Because even if you have Eidetic Memory, binding, and now you're taking private eye here, like
then you're like, please, is blue white open?
Please let me do it. Can I do the thing? And if they say no, you're either going to get a bad deck or you're abandoning 3 of your first picks, and neither of those are good spots to be in. So all said and done, I really like that you're like, okay, I now have 2 Eavesdroppers and a hard hitting question. I know I'm green. Green means I can do basically whatever. And I've got this great card to splash. Or I can be green blue. Like, you have so many options. So I think there's a bit of a sigh of relief here for you.
Oh, for sure. And I'm not sure I got there the right way.
But we got there.
I definitely like where I'm at. Pack 1, pick 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hard hitting question. Pack 1, pick
Ooh.
5. Really feeling good now. So no commons in consideration, but there's an evidence examiner here, the blue, green, gold uncommon. So snap that up while noting an Insidious Roots in the pack.
But like, you're noting the Insidious Roots. It's pick 5. There's no wheel.
Yeah. See.
Okay.
So pack 1, pick 6. Then I'm feeling on cloud 9. No white cards in the pack, and a Killer Among Us still in the pack. Pick 6. This pack either had to be
bite
incredible
down
or
on crime.
And bite down on crime. Yeah, pack is either incredible or incredible plus good white cards. Something weird happened here for Killer Among Us to still be here. Pick 6.
Yeah, you're thrilled. This is like getting the evidence after already feeling great. Pick 4, getting evidence examiner into Killer Among Us. Like, that's the dream.
Yeah. Pick 7. Do pick up a copy of the blue case, the case of the Filch Falcon.
Boo!
What? Do you want relieve the past?
No, I want. They went this way. You're too low on this card.
No, really?
Yes. Case of the Filch Falcon is not good outside of blue red. I feel so strongly about that.
It's so easy to solve in blue green.
Yeah, no, I think outside of blue red, it just puts you in really awkward spots too much of the time, where you're just like, oh, I don't want to crack this clue because I want to try and solve this thing, but you're really supposed to crack the clue, and then once you do, you're never solving it, and it's just a cantrip. If this isn't your final build, I would advise against it, sir.
It is not in my current final build, but I have questions for you about my final build. I'm not very confident in my final build. I got a lot of options.
Okay.
For how to do the final build. I don't know. I kind of like this here too because it's so good with profs, right? Like it puts a combat trick.
So as they went this way, it also makes a clue. Like, you're too low. You're too low.
Too low, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Pick 8, get a Bubble Smuggler. Pick 9, get a Pick Your Poison for the sideboard or the main deck, whatever we choose here. Pick 10, Fanatical Strength. Pick 11.
Ooh.
We wheel that chalk outline. So now I'm like, oh, okay, hello. And then last pick, that Insidious Roots comes back. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing now?
How are you the luckiest?
So I kind of have some more choices as we go immediately. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
So what you would have done here. This draft was super fun. Like, this is just a lot of spicy roots that you could have taken. So
spicy roots?
Oh,
tons.
I have a very good blue-green deck with no chalk outline Insidious Roots nonsense at the end of pack 1. But we got the chalk outline and the roots, which are very good build-arounds. So pack 2, pick 1.
And it's very clear from that
no one is interested in this
open,
life.
Right?
Yes.
That's one of the dangers of that deck is like so many different pieces have to come together. You have to get the Mavericks, you have to get the Striders, you have to get whatever. Like, you can feel pretty confident that those types of cards will be available to you in pack 2 and pack 3.
Yes. Yeah. So pack 2, pick 1, I already decision time. So there's a Projector Inspector, which, as we've shouted out today, is just a fantastic card.
Mm-hmm.
There's Gravestone Strider, the 2-mana 1/3 that filters mana, and then you can exile it from your graveyard to exile target card from your graveyard. Key piece in those chalk outline roots decks. And then 2 very good rares as well. There's Forensic Gadgeteer, 2 and a blue for the 2/3 when you cast an artifact spell, investigate, and activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. So that makes your clues cheaper to crack. I still think Inspector is better than Gadgeteer if we're taking a blue card.
I'm not crazy about Gadgeteer personally.
Yeah, that's fair. And then on the mythic rare slot, Urgent Necropsy. This is 2 black-green for an instant as an additional cost to cast this. Collect evidence X, where X is a total mana value of permanence this spell targets. You can destroy up to 1 artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker. This card I had not seen prior to being in Chicago, and it blew me out many times in Chicago. It's
from
very
yours truly, right?
Yours truly, and in the PTQ.
I think Necropsy is nuts, and I would take it here because, like, either you're splashing it, or you're just going green black and you're splashing some blue. Like, because really the only your blue cards that you have that you're excited about are Evidence Examiner / Eidetic Memory. I would be thinking about being green black. At this point, and playing Necropsy. I think
That's
Necropsy is nuts. And again, there's 4 black cards in this pack. So like if you don't wheel something good for, like, you're going to wheel Unscrupulous Agent. Ideally, you wheel Soul Enervation as another like payoff for stuff leaving the graveyard. Plus, it's a removal spell, but like I would take Necropsy, I think.
So I had a very similar moment to you with a Killer Among Us here. I knew if I took Necropsy, I knew there was no way I was not drafting Chalk Outline and Roots.
And so you're giving yourself outs to not to like draft just a good deck.
Just draft a good deck. Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I decided here. Because I agree. Like I wanted to pick Necropsy, and I was like, like what do I do? Because like
That's
if this
funny.
were a normal draft, I'm just slamming Necropsy
Yeah.
blinders here. But I wasn't quite willing to pull the trigger, and I didn't feel like I could take Gravestone Strider. And if
too early.
Yeah. So if I take Necropsy and Strider doesn't wheel, like I don't have any of the pieces yet, really, for
you only have Evidence Examiner.
Chalk Outline or Roots. Yeah, I have Evidence Examiner. That's it. And Evidence Examiner would be a splash in the black-green deck.
I like it. I mean, your reasoning is sound, and I respect it. And the if you're making the analogy to my Killer Among Us pick of just like, look, I know what this pick means for myself in this moment, then I think I respect it.
That was the exact same conversation I had with myself. It's funny. So I did take the Projector Inspector there, and the way the draft shook out, if I had taken the Necropsy, I very much would have been black-green, would have had triple Insidious Roots. Definitely an alternate life of what could have been. As it stands, I have a very good blue-green deck, total luck sack, and I opened Crashing Footfalls, pack 3, pick 1.
What a guy.
Which is a huge boon for the deck, and then wheeled Evidence Examiner from
and
pack
you have
3, pick
Case
1.
of the Locked Hothouse?
It's not in my final build.
Oh,
your
creature count's not that high?
Case of the Locked Hothouse? You mean land? Oh, no, my creature count's pretty high. I don't know how to build this. I also got Combine Chrysalis, which is from the list. So to sack clues to turn them into 4/4 beasts, is that too slow?
I think it's too slow.
I don't know. So I have many questions for you about my final build. Do you want me to send it to you now and we can do this on air? It seems terrible to do on the podcast.
Seems bad. We can do it off air. I think dickering and dealing, just saying a bunch of card names, is going to be
not great
boring.
content.
But yeah, well, I think we can leave our listeners there. We'll get to your deck building and get to hopefully getting to play another draft in the Arena Open for both of us later today.
Yeah, I think we've got 2 tight-looking decks. Your deck looks fantastic. Very good.
I hope so.
Tempo
I'm
deck.
slightly worried about no bombs, but what can you do?
Yeah. All right, great place to wrap us up. Thank you, as always, to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music. Make sure you give it a listen.
You can find all of our content at lordsoflimited.com. Links to, also, fresh picks on the Lords Limited website from the live show. If you go to lordslimited.com, you see us up there on the main stage from Chicago. But yeah, we got links to our merch, courtesy of TeePublic, links to our tier lists, our episode backlogs are there, links to our Twitch channels, respectively, and our YouTube channel, where you can find the log, the vlog, the tlog, whatever you want to call it, from MagicCon. All of that's available on our website.
If you've got any feedback about the show, any questions, or if you've got a quick hit, what's the play? Shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Lords of Limited.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.